Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful crochet wrap or shawl. This pattern is very basic and beginner friendly. I will be using only 3 crochet stitches, so single crochets, double crochets and chains. I will show you how to do each of them as we go. All of them are pretty simple to learn, so even though you're a complete beginner, I think you will be able to follow along and do the project from start to finish. The shawl is made with Paintbox yarns, Pick Your Palette Chunky Pots yarn. I initially went for the shade Feeling Blue, which is a beautiful mix of 5 blue colors. I already finished the whole tutorial, started editing, and then I figured out that I wasn't really consistent with my pattern and I had to start over. Since I used all the blue yarn I bought, there was no way for me to start over and finish the video tutorial with the same yarn. Luckily, I found 2 more cakes of that yarn in my yarn stash, but in different shades. That's why this video is now filmed with different colors. I will be using the same yarn, Paintbox yarn, Pick Your Palette Chunky Pots yarn, just in a different color palette. This one is called Sweet Dreams. I was planning to use this yarn for a different project, but well, we will use it today instead, which is, I guess, also a great excuse to order more yarn. As always, you can find the written instructions and more about the pattern on my blog, crobypatterns.com. You will need the instructions because I'm planning to skip a couple of rows that are constantly repeating. Well, you might be able to finish those rows without the written instructions too, but they will make the process much easier for you because you will be able to follow stitch count and make sure you're not missing or adding additional stitches, which is quite important for this tutorial. I'm telling you this for my personal experience. The link to the PDF pattern, blog post and all the materials you will need for this pattern will be in the description box down below. So go and check that out. With all this said, please consider subscribing. I post crochet tutorials, I talk about yarn and I share tips and tricks for crocheters. Click on the bell button to turn on post notifications so you won't miss any of my future videos. And let's start with what you will need for this tutorial. Now let's start with the materials. As I've mentioned earlier, I will be using Paintbox yarn, Pick Your Palette Chunky Pots in color Sweet Dreams. You will need 2 cakes to complete the shawl, and you will have to divide the cakes into 5 balls of yarn, each ball 1 color. What I discovered was that the Feeling Blue mix was much easier to use than the Sweet Dream color palette, and that's because the chunks of color in the blue mix were much longer than in the mix I will use in this tutorial. Sadly, I have no idea how it is with other yarn pots from Paintbox. There is 12 of them available on their website, but I am mentioning this because I saw a significant difference between those two and I definitely recommend and personally prefer the Feeling Blue mix more than the Sweet Dream mix for 2 reasons. The first one is in the difference in the number of yarn ends you will have. So because the chunks of yarn in the Sweet Dream cake are much shorter than in the Feeling Blue mix, you will end up with a bunch of yarn ends, which is never a good thing because someone has to wave them in and that's not a fun thing to do, at least not for me. The second thing is the color palette itself, and I know this is a very personal thing, but I have no idea what happened. I really like the Sweet Dream mix when it was just a cake, but then when I started working on the shawl, that green and blue color together just wasn't my thing. For the purpose of this tutorial, I decided to keep going. What was important for me was to show you how to create a shawl, and you can always go and choose the colors and yarn for this project that you like. In addition to the yarn, you will need 6.5mm crochet hook, stitch markers, tapestry needle and scissors. Now that we are ready, let's start with the tutorial. Okay, so I will start with my green yarn and 6.5mm crochet hook. You can start with any color or yarn you like. We will start off by making a magic ring. If this is your first time making a magic ring, wrap the yarn around your hand, take a crochet hook, go with your hook under the first strand of yarn and grab the second one. Now pull it through and secure the loop with chain 2. Those 2 chains are here just to lift the row to a proper height. They don't count as stitches, neither they will in the future. If you don't like magic rings, start this row with chain 3. The first chain will represent the magic ring and the other 2 will help you to lift the row. Now work 4 double crochet stitches, 2 chains and then 4 double crochet stitches again. into your magic ring. To make a double crochet, yarn over or wrap the yarn around your hook, then insert the hook into the loop, yarn over again and pull the loop through. Now you have 3 loops on your crochet hook. Yarn over again and pull the yarn through first 2 loops. When you have that, yarn over again and pull the loop through the rest. And that's your first double crochet stitch. Insert the stitch marker into it, just so you will know that this was your first stitch of this row. I will do next 3 stitches a little bit faster, but you can go back and watch and practice how to make a double crochet stitch as many times as you need to. Make sure you know how to do it right, because this pattern is mostly made of double crochet stitches, so there is no escape. You just have to learn how to make them. Those 2 chains will give us a nice and pointy corner. Because the left and the right side has to be exactly the same, we will make 4 double crochet stitches to this side as well. Just remember that your right side has to be a mirror shape of the left one, and that is something that we will have to keep in mind for the entire shawl. And this is a simple rule that we will have to follow in every row we make. Now you have all 4 of them. Now, do you see that tail that is peeking out of the magic ring? Alright, pull that tail as hard as you can and close the magic ring. As you can see here, our work is already getting its shape, so a shape of a tiny triangle, which is perfect. From now on, we will build on that triangle and it will grow with every row we will make. Let's start with row 2. Chain 2. Then work 2 double crochet stitches into the very first stitch of this row, and we will repeat that in every row, no exceptions. Do not forget to place the stitch marker into the very first stitch of this row. Now continue and work 1 double crochet stitch into each double crochet from the row below. In this row, that's 1 double crochet into each of next 3 stitches. Now, very important step, work 2 double crochet stitches, 2 chains, and then repeat 2 double crochet stitches again around the chain 2 space from the previous row. And that is the step that you will repeat every row, again, no exceptions. Perfect. Now we are going to repeat what we did on the left side of the scarf, but in a reverse order. So 1 double crochet into first 3 double crochet stitches from previous row, so row below. Only 1 stitch left, and we will make exactly the same thing as at the beginning of our row. So we are going to work 2 double crochet stitches into that last stitch. And our second row is now complete. Let's start with row 3. Row 3 is very similar to row 2, just that we have 3 additional stitches on each side of the triangle. Let's start with chain 2, then work 2 double crochet stitches into the first stitch. Now work 1 double crochet into each of next 6 stitches, which is 3 more than in row 2. In row 4 will be 3 more, and so on and so on. And that is because you get 1 additional stitch right at the beginning of the row with 2 double crochet stitches made into the same stitch, and then 2 additional stitches in the corner. Work 2 double crochet stitches, 2 chains, and then 2 double crochet stitches again around the chain to space from the row below. Nice! Now work 1 double crochet into each of next 6 stitches, again the same number of stitches as on your left side, so 1 double crochet into each of next 6 stitches. Only 1 stitch left, work 2 double crochet stitches into that stitch and your row is complete. The next few rows are simple and very similar to row 2 and 3. What you will do is you are going to chain 2 at the beginning of each row, just to lift the row to a proper height. Then you will work 1 double crochet into each stitch from the row below, and that number will grow with each row for 3 additional stitches. When you come to the corner, so chain 2 space, work 2 double crochet stitches, 2 chains, and then 2 double crochet stitches again into that space, so around the chain from the previous row. Now the next step can be a bit tricky, and that's because at this point you will end with the chain and you will start with the real stitches from the row below, and if you're not very careful here, you might start in the chain instead of the stitch from the row below, which is 1 step too fast. If you're a beginner and you're still learning how to recognize stitches in the crochet fabric, I would advise using a stitch marker here. Just place the stitch marker into the second chain right next to the double crochet stitch on the right side of your scarf right before you start working on your corner. That will help you find the stitch you need when you will start working on the right side of your scarf. Now, it's very easy to count stitches now that there are not so many of them, but later when each side of the scarf will have more than 50 stitches, you will not want to count stitches over and over again, and the stitch marker will help you with that. Now you can try to continue working in rows on your own, or you can hop over to my blog and follow the written instructions there. The link is in the description box below. The instructions are pretty straightforward and you should not have any trouble following them. Just remember, if the number is written in front of the stitch, then you have to work that number of stitches into the same stitch, but we covered that part here in the video tutorial just a few steps back, so there is nothing you should be afraid of. Continue with your rows, and when you finish all 7 rows, come back and we will make row 8 together. Okay, so here we are at the beginning of row 8. That means that our first 7 rows are now complete and you've learned the basic idea behind the triangle shape. Now chain 2 and turn your work. Work 2 double crochets into the first one, place the stitch marker into the first stitch, then chain 1. Work 1 double crochet into the first one, chain 1 and skip 1 stitch, and continue repeating that all the way across to the corner of the shawl. That's 9 more times, which makes it 10 times altogether. And in the next row you are going to use those chains, with an exception of 2 chains at the beginning of the row and 2 chains in the corner, as stitches. So you are going to make 1 double crochet stitch into each of those chains. Alright, 1 stitch left, so we are going to work 1 double crochet into that last stitch. Now work 2 double crochet stitches, 2 chains and 2 double crochet stitches again around the chain 2 space from the row below. Again, feel free to use a stitch marker to mark the chain if you need to. Now we are going to repeat the stitches we've made on the left side of the shawl, but in a reverse order. So we are going to start with double crochet stitch. Then we are going to repeat, skip the first one, then we are going to chain 1 and double crochet 1 10 times. So as I've mentioned earlier, there is going to be a lot of yarn ends if you are using the same yarn as I do here, and this is how to change the yarn. When you're almost done with your double crochet stitch, so right before your last yarn over and pull through, take your new yarn, create a loop and pull it through both loops on your hook. Simple as that. Then continue working on the stitches with your new yarn. One quick tip, I usually grab the yarn with 2 of my fingers just so that the yarn doesn't slip through the stitch. Once you create your first stitch or chain with your new yarn, the yarn is secured and you can continue with your stitches. Chain 1 and work 2 double crochet stitches into the last stitch of this row. But because this is the last row of part 1, we are going to switch the yarn right before we start with our new row, even before we make that 2 chains that we make at the beginning of every row. So that means we need to switch the yarn in our last double crochet of this row. And we are going to do that the same way as we switched the yarn a few stitches back. So when you still have 2 loops on your hook, create a loop with your new yarn, pull it through loops on the hook on your crochet hook and continue with new yarn. Part 2, row 2. Now chain 2 with your new yarn, then work 2 double crochet stitches into the first one, place the stitch marker into the first stitch of this row. Now continue with double crochet stitches and work 1 double crochet stitch into each stitch all the way across to the corner. That is 25 double crochet stitches in total. Make sure you are not skipping any chains from the row below along the way. I'm working under both loops of the chain here, but you can also work around the chain if that makes it easier for you. Here we are in the corner again. As usual, work 2 double crochet stitches, 2 chains, and then 2 double crochet stitches again around the chain 2 space from the row below. Work 1 double crochet into each of next 25 stitches. And now work 2 double crochet stitches into the very last stitch of this row. Now you're going to continue working in rows, 2 double crochet stitches in the first one, 1 double crochet stitch into each stitch all the way up to the corner, 2 double crochet stitches, 2 chains, and 2 double crochet stitches again in the corner, 1 double crochet stitch into each stitch all the way up to the last stitch of the row, and 2 double crochet stitches into that last stitch. Again, you can find the written instructions for those rows on my blog. The link is in the description box below. Finish the rows from 2 up to 6, then come back and I will show you how to make row 7, and we will make row 7 together. Here we are in row 7. Let's start with chain 2. Then we will turn our work. Work 2 double crochet stitches into the first stitch of this row. Do not forget to place the stitch marker into the very first one. Then chain 1. Do not skip any stitches, just start working 1 double crochet into the first one, chain 1, and then skip 1, and repeat this sequence 21 times. Work 1 double crochet stitch into the last one, so the stitch right before the corner. Then work 2 double crochet stitches, 2 chains, and then 2 double crochet stitches again around the chain from the previous row. Now we have to repeat the stitches that we've made on the left side, but in a reverse order. Double crochet into the first one, then you are going to repeat skip 1, chain 1, double crochet 1 21 times. Chain 1, then work 2 double crochet stitches into the very last stitch of this row. But before you finish your last double crochet stitch, change the yarn. I will from now on use orange yarn. We are now in part 3. Part 3 is made with orange yarn. Chain 2 to lift the row to a proper height, then work 2 double crochet stitches into the same stitch. Insert the stitch marker into the very first stitch of the row. After you do that, work 1 double crochet stitch into each stitch all the way up to the corner, 2 double crochet stitches, 2 chains, and then 2 double crochet stitches again into the corner. 1 double crochet stitch into each stitch all the way up to the last stitch of the row, and 2 double crochet stitches into the very last stitch of the row. Repeat that row a couple of more times. Please have in mind that the stitch count will grow with each row you make, and you will get 3 additional stitches on each side of the shawl each row. You can pause the video here and meet me back when you finish all 5 rows of double crochet stitches made with color 3. Alright, we are now at the beginning of row 6 made with color 3. In my case that's orange. We are going to start off by chaining 2 just to lift the row to a proper height. Work 2 double crochet stitches into the first one, then chain 1. Now repeat double crochet stitch into the first one, chain 1, and then skip 1 stitch 31 times. Be careful here because this row doesn't have this additional double crochet stitch right before the corner, so we are going to jump straight into creating a corner by making 2 double crochet stitches, 2 chains, and then 2 double crochet stitches again. Now, because we have to repeat what we've done on the left side, here on the right side as well, just in the reverse order, we are going to chain 1, skip 1 stitch and double crochet into the next one, and we are going to repeat that 30 more times, so 31 times in total. One stitch left, chain 1 first, then create 2 double crochet stitches into the last stitch of this row. Right before you finish your last double crochet stitch, change the yarn to color 4. I'm going to switch to gray color now, but you can go ahead and switch to any color you like. Here we are in our first row of part 4. I'm going to continue with gray yarn now. We are going to start with chain 2, then we are going to work 2 double crochet stitches into the first one, 1 double crochet into each double crochet and chain from the row below. When you come to the corner, work 2 double crochet stitches to chains and then 2 double crochet stitches again into the chain 2 space from the row below. After that, continue and work 1 double crochet into each double crochet and chain from the row below. Stop 1 stitch before the end of the row and work 2 double crochet stitches into that last stitch. Repeat these steps for rows 1 to 4, and when you complete all 4 of them, come back and we are going to make row 5 together. Perfect, this means you've completed all 4 rows made with color 4. We are going to start this row with chain 2, those 2 chains will lift our row to a proper height. Then we are going to work 2 double crochet stitches into the same stitch. Don't forget to place a stitch marker into the first one. Create 1 chain, do not skip any stitches here and work 1 double crochet into the next one. Then chain 1 and skip 1 stitch. Repeat that 38 more times, so 39 times in total. Alright, we are in the corner area again. Work 2 double crochet stitches to chains and 2 double crochet stitches again into the chain 2 space from the row below. Now we are going to repeat the stitches that we've made on the left side of the shawl, but as always in the reverse order. Repeat the sequence, chain 1, then skip 1 stitch and work 1 double crochet stitch into the next one. Repeat that 38 more times, so 39 times in total. One stitch left, chain 1 first and then work 2 double crochet stitches into that last stitch. But right before you finish your last double crochet stitch, switch the yarn to color number 5 I will switch to blue color, and you can also continue with the color of your choice. This is our final part, part 5. This part is made of only 4 rows. We are going to start with chain 2, then we are going to turn our work and work 2 double crochet stitches into the very first stitch of this row. Don't forget to place a stitch marker into the first stitch of the row, then work 1 double crochet stitch into every double crochet and every chain from the row below. When you come to the corner, work 2 double crochet stitches, 2 chains and 2 double crochet stitches again into the corner, or chain 2 space from the row below. Repeat the stitches from the left side and work 1 double crochet into every double crochet and chain from the row below. Finish the row with 2 double crochet stitches into the very last stitch of this row. Repeat that for first 3 rows. You can pause the video here and come back when you complete all 3 rows, and I will show you how to make the very last row of this shawl and a few final steps to complete the project. We are in our final row, row 4. Start with chain 2, then work 2 double crochet stitches into the first one. Chain 1. Repeat double crochet into the first one, chain 1, skip 1 45 times. Work 1 double crochet into the stitch right before you start working on the corner. Then work 2 double crochet stitches, 2 chains and 2 double crochet stitches again into the chain 2 space from the row below. Work 1 double crochet stitch into the next one. After that, repeat chain 1, skip 1, double crochet into the next one 45 times. When you complete all of that, chain 1 and work 2 double crochet stitches into the very last stitch of this row. Do not finish and cut the yarn just yet, because we are going to create an edging around the top edge of the shawl. Now we are going to work on the top edge. We are going to create a line of single crochet stitches, but we will switch colors every time we reach a new color on the shawl. So we are going to start with blue, then we are going to continue with gray, and so on and so on. Let's start with chain 2, then work evenly along the top edge, so 2 single crochet stitches into every double crochet stitch all the way across to the other edge. Finish with a slip stitch made into the last stitch of the row, and then the main part will be complete. So the only part of the shawl that is missing now are the tassels. We are going to make 3, 1 for each corner of the shawl. You're not going to need any special accessories for this part, maybe just larger and sharper scissors. After all, you're going to cut through a bunch of yarn at the same time. Then you're going to need 2 shades of yarn. I will use green and yellow, a tapestry needle, and your hands. Wrap the yarn color number 1 around your hand somewhere around 18 times. More you do that, the thicker tassel you'll get. Then take color number 2 and wrap it around your hand over the color number 1 around 12 times. Use the color number 1 again and wrap it around your hand 10 to 12 times. Cut a piece of yarn around 30 centimeters or 12 inches long. Thread the tapestry needle or just use your fingers and tie the top of the tassel. Take sharp scissors and trim the ends. Then cut the 15 to 20 centimeters long or 6 to 8 inches long strand of yarn. Create a simple loop. Pull the tassel through the loop and wrap the yarn around the tassel around 1 centimeter from the top. Make a nice and firm knot. Take a tapestry needle, thread a yarn tail, pull the both ends through the center of the tassel. Make a few additional knots on the top of the tassel and then attach the tassel to the one of the corners of the shawl. Then repeat the steps for the rest. Alright guys, that would be all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave me a comment down below letting me know what would you like me to crochet next, or if you have any questions regarding the video or any other questions related to crocheting. Subscribe if you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, and maybe, just maybe, share it with your friends that love crochet as well. It helps other people finding crochet tutorials and me growing my YouTube channel. Thank you so much to all of you who are buying my crochet pattern and reading my blog. It really means a lot and it helps me to continue with my work so I can share new patterns with you guys. Have a great week and I see you guys very soon. Bye!